Well, hello again, and this is Templates for Change series on natural laws and harmonies. And this is the last in this series, number 8, which is to do with nature's laws and ancient times. And we're going to open this curio up, and I'm the presenter, John, and I'm going to be continuing with this series, the last one of the series. So let's move on. Now, I wonder why we're starting to talk about nature's laws and ancient times when, of course, we live in the present and seek the future. Well, one of the reasons is that we've talked quite a lot about science in this series, and science is indeed quite marvelous in many ways and truly has shown us by its discoveries just what an amazing and awe-inspiring place our world and our universe is. But we may be led to think that to understand the core laws of the universe, we must rely on modern sciences such as physics. You know, you might need to have a kind of physicist in the cupboard if you're going to be able to understand the laws, someone to ask questions when you don't understand what's going on. Or you might need a kind of massive machine like they have the one at CERN pictured here, something like that in your back garden, just to check up on what the natural laws are. But actually, while the core laws science has discovered are obviously seen in the scientific work itself, they can also be seen in the natural worlds around us and in our lives. Now, that's not really surprising, is it? Because if these laws do really exist in the minute particles at the very heart and origin of our universe, then they must also be found throughout the world that came from there and is based on them and originated from them. So they are going to be seen in all the natural world, indeed all the universe around us. Now, we have actually discovered, haven't we, that nature's profound and simple laws were certainly known by our ancestors across the world as far back as, say, 5,000 years in China or India or elsewhere. But actually, modern humans go back much further than that. They appeared about 200,000 years ago, as far as we can tell. Now, it seems clear that earliest modern man, not just 5,000 years ago, but tens of thousands of years ago, would have also experienced these laws for themselves. And in fact, we know that they did, with evidence going back as far as the earliest artifacts we have discovered. And clearly, we know that ancient humans were like us. They had the same capabilities and intelligences that we have. And just as we could look into the world of nature to see things, so would they have done. And here's an example, for example, of the importance of the number 5 in the 5 digits of the hand in Aboriginal art in Australia some 30,000 years ago. And there'll be other examples of that in this short presentation. So let's go back to these 6 laws again, starting with duality of life and, of course, the 2 genders. Now, for ancient humans, the core originating duality of life would have been so immediate and so important to them. Now, firstly, obviously, the 2 genders, with their adjacent but different natures, and like all humans of all times, they would have lived and experienced their lives with this duality at its heart. And of course there would be many more dualities critical to them. Some examples are day and night, the sky and the earth, sleep and awake, life and death. These core dualities of life would have pervaded all their lives just in the same way as they pervade ours. And here is a lovely, beautiful little sculpture, a figurine of 2 lovers from the Middle East, the earliest representation that we know of, some 11,000 years ago. And then when we move on to the triad of influences, the triad of energies, well, we can see how important this law of three would have been to them, because it's only in the creation of man, woman, and a child that their lives could continue. And that, of course, is true for all life. And also in the greater world around them, they would clearly have seen and felt the three great influences of the earth, the sun, and the moon, controlling their lives in many, many ways, growing seasons, fertility, and temperature, and all sorts of importances to their lives, even more important than to our lives today, when in the sort of Western world we're somewhat shielded from this. So for them, with such an immediate and direct experience of these mysteries, the triad would definitely have been of the greatest importance to their lives, and they would have known this law of three, if you like, from ancient times. And of course, moving on to the fourfold cycle of growth and the fourfold cycle of the appearance of the physical world, then humans obviously watch the cycle of the moon, as they did, and they also watched the cycles of the sun. And of the greatest importance was undoubtedly the four great events of the midwinter and midsummer solstice, the longest and shortest days, and the two equinoxes, which are days of equal day and equal night that marked the year. And these again would have been critical marks for them through the year, because as the sun reached the lowest point, then they knew from that point then the warmth of the sun was going to come back and the growing season would return. And they could prepare for their lives as they saw the cycles of the sun moving through the sky. So this cycle of the great four events would have been clear to them and critical to them from the earliest days, marking the changes of sun and season and the fourfold cycles of growth and fertility. And you can see here, for example, in more recent times, perhaps 3,000–4,000 years ago, how stone circles or standing stones were used to mark particular points of the winter or summer solstice in the sky, so they could have a quick marking of those sacred times and sacred days. And then, of course, we move into the five systems in the human. And ancient humans, just like us, would have been very much aware of the fivefold shape of the human, which we know as the pentagram, and they surely would have seen the significance of the fivefold design in the human. But this also went further in their lives, because some of the most famous artworks they left, and some of the earliest artworks that they left, were palm prints, pictures of palms, which they created by holding their palm against the wall and spraying a colour or a kind of paint or colour around it, leaving the print of the hand. And of course there are those 5 digits of the hands that again mark the importance and significance of the number 5. They surely would have seen those 5 digits and wondered and realized that this was an important part of the human design. And then, of course, just like us, ancient humans must have marveled at the rainbow with its beautiful spectrum and wondered at its significance and what it meant. And certainly they didn't need a scientific lab or a prism to count the colours and see the 7 clearly depicted, just as we do in this picture. So such a dramatic depiction of this natural bow of 7 colours would surely have shown them the importance of these 7 and the importance of this 7-fold principle in nature. And they would have seen the significance of this in their lives, in their human life, and in the natural worlds around them. And finally, we're coming back to the 12-fold cycle of the moon, and the 12-fold cycle thus in the heavens and in the year. And as this ancient artifact shows from 32,000 years ago, ancient humans were studying the moon from the earliest days and even amazingly creating calendars. And watching and marking the changes in the moon cycle as they did, they could not possibly have missed that in the passage of the greater year of the sun, the moon would have completed 12 cycles in the sky. And thus it is not surprising that for us today, 12 is associated with the completion of this cycle, of the full cycle of the characterization of life and of humans and of wisdoms, because they could see that in this total turning movement of the sun, it was marked by a 12-step completion and a 12-step fulfillment, if you like, around the heavens. So there we are. That's just a little additional curio to indicate that our ancient ancestors must have realized these 12 laws going back through their lives tens of thousands of years ago, probably over 100,000 years ago. These natural laws were known to them. The laws that science has also demonstrated to us in many ways, in the minutiae of the universe and in other aspects of life that they wouldn't have known about directly, but they could have known about through their own experience without the modern science that we have today. Okay, well, if you're interested in more things on templates for change, there's our website. I hope you've enjoyed and found this interesting, and there's more presentations on the website that you might like to follow up. And so I'll say cheerio and hopefully speak to you again if you're going to listen to our presentations. And so I'll say bye for now.